Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the tragic loss of Air India Flight 171. I'm Geoffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say joined by my co-host, Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt, Germany. Good morning to you, Richard.
And good afternoon to you in Perth, Geoffrey.
Thank you. So, viewers, this episode is FAQ and fake news. One or two viewers have questioned the purpose of delivering daily updates on the loss of Air India 171. The purpose is simple, and that is to try and make sense of a preliminary report that doesn't make sense and leaves everyone hanging in suspense. But it's not just Richard and myself trying to make sense of this tragic crash. All our subscribers and viewers are too. And it is with your help we're able to both move the understanding forward and also apply pressure on the Indian AAIB to do better, much better. The input from you, our subscribers, has been superb, with not just one-line questions, but dozens of detailed analyses. So if you're not a subscriber, please join to be part of our growing community of experts. You have challenged us, you have corrected us, and more than anything, you have inspired us to do better. Behind each of these episodes is literally hours and hours of research and thought, trying to find facts where there are few, trying to be precise where the preliminary report doesn't give actual quotes and uses words such as about and approximate. We read about 1,000 online comments a day and sometimes over 50 emails a day. Yesterday, we posted 75 replies to online questions. Some of you ask, why don't we wait for the final report? On the surface of it, a reasonable question, except if you work in this industry and know how many reports are flawed or vague or downright untruthful. Finally, we also deal with fake reports and fake news related to AI 171. And one such report was that British Airways was to dispose of its Boeing 787 fleet. Richard, you've got something to say about this one.
Yeah, there's a YouTube video going around called British Airways CEO sold off every Boeing 787 after discovering a horrifying secret. It is not true. The British Airways fleet has 787-8, -9 and -10. And the -8, there are 12 active currently. That's 2 out of the 14 that are owned. The -9, there are 18 active currently. That's 1 out of 19 is inactive of the 19 they own. And the -10, there are 11 active. That's out of 12 total that they own. It's just 1 inactive. On top of that, the International Airlines Group, IAG, the BA parent company, has ordered 32 Boeing 787-10s scheduled for delivery between 2028 and 2033. And they additionally hold options on 10 more 787s. And I think, Geoffrey, there is a real issue actually going on behind the scenes of this fake news that we received.
Yes, there is. There are a number of 787s grounded around the world relating to problems with the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engine. It's not a Boeing problem, it's a Rolls-Royce problem, and it's been going on now for a number of years. And it's to do with the deterioration of the fan blades prematurely and the replacement of those fan blades. And unfortunately, Rolls-Royce has been struggling to keep up with the demand for new engines, let alone repairing of existing engines. This has caused a lot of frustration for people like, say, Air New Zealand, which has had a lot of its 787s grounded over the last few years, and in fact has prompted that airline with its next batch of 787s to swap from Rolls-Royce Trent engines to the GE engine. And in fact, many airlines are doing just that because they're finding that the General Electric engine is more durable although Rolls has come up with a significantly improved Trent 1000, which it's rolling out to new customers now. So we're on to viewer comments and questions. And this time we've decided to hold the very best question to last. Not that they're not all good questions, but the last one has provoked the most interest. So you're going to have to watch to the end. So Suko Shah, it would be advisable to issue updates to the preliminary report and include CVR transcripts and limited FDR data points. That type of updates can be done monthly if Indian population demands it. The narratives on Indian channels will be reduced to one narrative. The AAIB can move faster with today's technology and should provide monthly updates to the preliminary report by using addenda. A great idea, Richard. What do you think?
Absolutely a great idea. And it's not just the Indian population, I think it's the global population who would welcome that. It would indeed be very helpful to have regular updates to the preliminary report as the investigation proceeds. There are a significant number of open questions, and let me list you the questions. Number one, what was causing the low acceleration before takeoff? Number two, why is there no ADSB data in the preliminary report? Number three, why is there no altitude data in the preliminary report? Number four, why is there no information on the airspeed decay, deceleration, and descent rate in the preliminary report? The big question that many viewers have is when and why was the RAT deployed? When did it come online? Both hydraulic power and electrical power coming online. And question six, why is there no comparison to other similar incidents in the preliminary report or any information about what the expected range of all the data points should be? We've put together a list of frequently asked questions, and the answers that we have as far as we know at this stage, and a link is included in the description below this video.
Mike D, a question for you two gentlemen. I'm someone who was once a working journalist at the start of my career, and after that continued to work with media and even Dow Jones. So I'm slightly perplexed at what has been leaked to the Wall Street Journal simply because it's incomplete. Whomever leaked the info almost assuredly heard the cockpit voice recorder and has seen the FDR information. Despite that, they still were cryptic in what they released. If I'm the journalist, I'm like, okay, give me the full story that you know. The leaker didn't. So my question, is it possible the condition that the NTSB remained involved was that they allowed some additional and directional information to be leaked through the Wall Street because they weren't ready to include it in the initial report?
Well, that's a very interesting insight. I'm not a journalist, but I do note that the chairwoman of the NTSB, Jennifer Homendy, wants to listen to the CVR audio file herself. So there have been several leaks, not just to the Wall Street Journal, but from other sources close to the investigation and even to ourselves. So there's quite a lot of information flow, and what is actually going on behind the scenes, I wouldn't even like to hazard a guess.
No, it's very complex, very sensitive, and very political. We should not have to rely on leaked information, though. Monthly updates would be far, far better. So from @Dakar, on approach many years ago, I pressed toga instead of auto throttle disconnect. Instantly recognizing the mistake, immediately disconnected the autopilot and landed. There was no time delay. It was instantaneous. I only made that mistake once. And Robert Maynard, 7145, Whether the movement of the switches was deliberate or a brain fart is irrelevant. Assuming that was the captain and the FO was caught by surprise, confronted by lack of engine power, lack of speed, lack of height, it would have been overwhelming. Confronted by all that, he asks, "Why did you do that?" At this point, we do not know if he is aware that what the captain has done. That in itself would take several seconds. He then has to evaluate the situation, observe the switches, reach over and move them. I believe 9 seconds is an extremely acceptable response time. And Joseph Boxmeyer, UD3D, in reply to Robert, yes, the 10 seconds seems reasonable to me. Some various problems may have been hitting him at the same general time.
And
Richard.
the fuel shutoff may not have been the first.
Mm.
Many thanks, Daka, Robert, and Joseph. Daka for the great confession. And I think we've all experienced similar brain farts or momentary lapses of memory. And they're fascinating observations. And I think we haven't got to the bottom of this whole story yet. The preliminary report states the following, and we're showing a screenshot of the acceleration along the runway. It's just a simple table with the start point where the aircraft was cleared for takeoff, the time of the start of the roll, and the time of reaching V1 and VR. The difference in time between the start and reaching V1 is 56 seconds, and the acceleration then observed over that 56 seconds is 1.40 meters per second squared. An increase in speed of 153 knots is equivalent to 78.67 meters per second. And in 56 seconds, you take 78.67, divide it by 56, and you get 1.40 meters per second squared. Now, the typical acceleration for a Boeing 787-8 at a high weight of 213,401 kilos and on toga thrusts and flaps 5 on a dry runway is normally in the range of 2.5 to 3.3 meters per second squared. That's taken from Boeing performance data and real flight data recorder traces and validated with simulator data. Even under degraded conditions, a hot day, high density altitude, a slight tailwind, you would still expect at least 2 to 2.5 meters per second squared acceleration. So the first open question is, what was causing the low acceleration before takeoff?
Yeah, indeed. Very interesting analysis, Richard. Roland Barnes, 7105. How close are the switches for the fuel talked about and the switches for the landing gear? Well, that's a lever. Can you show a visual of both and how close are they to each other? Thank you and good job, guys. Good question.
Well, Roland, we're showing a screenshot of the fuel switches and the gear select lever. They're circled in red on the screenshot, and we'll include the screenshot in the description as well. So the fuel switches and the gear lever are in two separate locations. But I don't think the point is about the fact that they're in two separate locations. I think the point is, what is the cognitive process that the pilot went through when he was thinking about gear lever or he was thinking about fuel switches? And we talked about the British Airways incident where the co-pilot mixed up his left hand on the throttle levers and the right hand on the yoke. Those are also in two very different locations. And the key point out of the British Airways incident is that they called for a cognitive rehearsal of actions prior to takeoff. So BA have introduced this cognitive rehearsal in the cockpit and in simulator training.
Yeah. Yeah. When the aircraft takes off, we have 8 ADSB data points from Flight Radar 24. Why is there no ADSB data point in the preliminary report?
That's a good question. And we're showing a screenshot of the preliminary report data and the flight radar data together. So you get an overall picture of what both are saying. But please note the gaps in that table. And this raises the next question. Why is there no altitude data in the preliminary report? The preliminary report states the aircraft achieved the maximum recorded airspeed of 180 knots IAS at about 08:08:42 UTC. And immediately thereafter, the engine 1 and engine 2 fuel cutoff switches transition from run to cutoff position, one after the other, with a time gap of 0.1 seconds. So we know the max airspeed of 180 knots was achieved. We know also the max altitude from Flight Radar 24 was 625 feet above mean sea level. But there is actually 7 seconds between those two events, the max speed and the max altitude. So for 7 seconds, the speed must have been decreasing from 180 knots, say down to around 165, where the aircraft would then start to descend. And this is perfectly reasonable for a Boeing 787-8 at this high weight on takeoff, and represents a deceleration of around 1.1 meters per second squared. And that raises the next question. Why is there no information on the airspeed decay, deceleration, and descent rate in the preliminary report?
And what would also be helpful, Richard, is if the report let us know whether there was any call to raise the undercarriage and exactly what time that happened or didn't happen.
Yeah.
So Gaming Nostalgia Remastered, that's an interesting name. The RAT deployment is initiated at 08:08:41 and both engine fuel switches are set from run to cutoff 2 seconds later. Can someone explain why the RAT would deploy before the engines are cut off? Wouldn't this indicate a problem with the aircraft prior to the fuel cutoff? This comment raised 100 replies, Richard. So can you walk us through this RAT deployment?
Yeah, it's obviously of some concern and interest to a whole number of viewers. And some viewers have even called this the RAT conundrum. Was the RAT deployed before the switches or after the switches? And the engine shutdown and RAT deployment sequence is as follows, and there are many possible causes for RAT deployment. So this is just one possible sequence based on the dual engine shutdown scenario. So number one, the dual engine shutdown. Number two, both generators, IDGs shut down. Number three, the AC bus fails and the hydraulics fail. Then the RAT is automatically deployed. The main battery will back up whilst deployment is taking place. Then the RAT hydraulic comes online. And finally, the RAT electrical power comes online. And this timing sequence is, if you start from engine shutdown at 0 seconds. The IDG will shut down after 3 seconds. The AC bus failure and hydraulic failure is exactly the same time, after 3 seconds. The RAT deployment is 3.8 seconds after shutdown. The main battery backup is instantaneous at 3.87 seconds. The RAT hydraulic comes online at around 9.87 seconds after shutdown. And finally, the electrical power stabilizes at around 13.87 seconds. Now, the preliminary report is a bit vague and states the RAT hydraulic pump began supplying hydraulic power at about 08:08:47 UTC. The word about I take to mean plus or minus 1 second from 08:08:47, but it could, of course, mean something different. The phrase began supplying hydraulic power is very vague and can mean somewhere between RAT deployment initiation, it immediately starts supplying some hydraulic power, but full hydraulic power takes up to 6 seconds. So somewhere between, almost immediately and 6 seconds later. The RAT initiation of deployments specific timing is not mentioned in the preliminary report, although they would have that captured in the FDR, which is part of the EAFR, to the nearest 0.01 second. So I'm assuming full hydraulic power is available 9.87 seconds after initiation, and initial hydraulic power is available 3.87 seconds after initiation. And I take began to mean initial hydraulic power. So there are two possible scenarios, and you can work backwards. And in one scenario, you conclude the fuel switches were moved before the RAT deployment. In the other scenario, the fuel switches were moved after RAT deployment. And the question is, was it before the switches were moved or after that the RAT was deployed? Now, we have been informed from a reliable source close to the investigation that the engine shutdown was due to the fuel switches being moved from run to cutoff. So was there another issue then going on the runway, in addition to the dual engine shutdown just after rotation? We know for a fact that the engines did shut down, but they were both successfully relit. So we know for a fact the engines did not fail because they were successfully relit. We also note the aircraft managed to glide almost a mile, so some thrust was available. And we note the aircraft never managed to regain sufficient thrust to be able to start climbing again after the descent started from the initial climb. So it opens up a number of other questions. And we showed yesterday the shutdown and relight timeline, and we're including that in our frequently asked questions section and also in the description below. And Geoffrey's website has a link to all the FAQs in the description below.
Richard, there are other similar aircraft incidents. Can they shed light on what happened to Air India 171?
Yes, I think they can. Asiana Flight 214 was a Boeing 777 where both engines were moved to idle as it was coming into land. It decelerated very fast at around 1.3 meters per second squared. The airspeed dropped from 137 knots to 110 knots in 8 seconds. Just prior to impact. And then we have another example, the Qantas Flight 32, which was an Airbus A380, where one out of the four engines failed. It decelerated slowly at around 0.34 meters per second square. The airspeed dropped from 250 to 180 knots in 120 seconds prior to the aircraft leveling out. So, that brings me to the next question. Why is there no comparison to other similar incidents in the preliminary report or any information about the expected range of data to help us to evaluate what was going on?
Yeah, indeed. As we've said, far too many questions, and evidenced by the fact that there are literally thousands and thousands of videos covering this from thousands of channels like ourselves, and tens of thousands of viewers asking, searching questions. I've
Yeah.
never seen a report that's so incomplete and so confusing and so vague as this one, apart from the China Eastern one, of course. But that was a one
Well,
pager.
one pager, yeah. So at least we got several pages from
Yeah,
the Indian authorities, but as you say, it raises so many questions. And then viewers who say, "Why haven't we come to a conclusion?" It's obvious. I don't know how you can come to a conclusion when there are so many open questions.
there are, absolutely. And I go back to our introduction. Why are we doing it? Well, we're doing it to keep pressure on the AAIB, just as we did it with MH370, and help with other colleagues to ensure that the Malaysians kept this tragic crash, front and center, and not walk away from it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's important. So, thank you very much indeed, Richard, for your analysis today with those questions from our viewers. And we're going to be back tomorrow with another theme, probably based on your questions that come through. So please keep them coming. We really do appreciate them. And please keep the lovely comments coming. We love those. And if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to us and please like us. So thank you very much indeed, Richard.
You're welcome.
And thank you, viewers, and please do tune in tomorrow. Thank you.